The night was heavy, the streets empty, and the wind bit at the faces of Marta and Sophia, two sisters who had been through more than either could have ever imagined. Marta, 17 years old, looked at Sophia, just 10, feeling a mix of despair and determination. Her only thought was to keep her younger sister safe. Each step they took echoed in the silence of the small town, which seemed to have been swallowed by the darkness. Their coats were thin, inadequate against the biting cold, and their stomachs rumbled, empty for days. But it wasn't the hunger that pained Marta the most. It was the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Looking at Sophia, who still had a spark of innocence in her eyes despite everything, Marta wondered how long she could keep protecting her. Every time Sophia smiled or said something hopeful, Marta's heart clenched tighter. She couldn't fail her, not now. As they wandered the dark streets, they spotted an old house in the distance. The paint was peeling, the windows broken, and the front yard was overrun with weeds. To most, it would seem like a forgotten, abandoned house, but to Marta, it looked like their only hope. "Let's go in there," Marta said firmly, though inside she was full of doubt. She knew the house might not be safe, but there were no other options. Without hesitation, Sophia squeezed her older sister's hand and nodded. As they approached, the creaking of the old door made Marta's heart race. Inside, everything was covered in dust, and the silence was almost tangible. The floorboards creaked under their feet, and every sound seemed amplified by the emptiness around them. Sophia looked up at Marta with her big, hopeful eyes and said, "I think we finally found a place to stay, right, Marta?" Marta forced a smile. "Yes, sister, we finally found a place." But deep down, something told her that this makeshift shelter wouldn't be what they hoped. The air inside the house was thick, almost suffocating, filled with the smell of mold and dust accumulated over the years. Every step the sisters took sent small clouds of dust into the air from the decaying wooden floor. Shadows danced on the walls, cast by the faint light filtering through the broken windows, creating an atmosphere of mystery and abandonment. Marta noticed the details. There were signs that this house had once been a home. A crooked picture hung on one of the walls, faded almost beyond recognition, depicting a family that had once smiled there. On the floor, old glasses lay tipped over, as if someone had left in a hurry, never to return. The sense of emptiness was overwhelming, as if even time itself had given up on this place. Sophia, still full of childlike innocence, explored the house with curious eyes. "Do you think someone lived here?" she asked, her voice softly echoing through the space. Marta didn't want to answer, didn't want to fuel hopes she knew were unfounded. "We don't know, Sophia, but for now this is where we'll stay." They climbed a narrow, steep staircase, each step groaning under their weight as if the wood itself was mourning. Marta gripped the railing firmly, fearing it might give way at any moment. When they reached the second floor, they found a narrow hallway with closed doors on either side. They walked to the end of the hall and opened the farthest door. The room they entered was small but surprisingly intact. An old bed with a worn-out mattress sat in one corner, and a wooden wardrobe with a slightly ajar door seemed to hold forgotten secrets. The curtains, now tattered and grimy, swayed gently with the cold breeze entering through the broken window. "We'll stay here, Sophia," Marta said, trying to hide her discomfort. She knew it was going to be a long night. The walls of the house seemed to whisper tales of times gone by, and every sound, whether the creaking wood or the wind seeping through the cracks, made Marta's heart race. The silence around them wasn't comforting. On the contrary, it felt like something or someone was watching. As they prepared a small space to sleep, the eerie atmosphere and growing tension were impossible to ignore. Something about this house felt off. As the dim light of dawn faded, Sophia, ever curious, approached a dark corner of the room. There was something there that caught her attention. An old wooden chest, covered in layers of dust, nearly invisible in the darkness. She knelt and tried to open it, but the lid wouldn't budge. "Marta, come look at this," Sophia called out, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and mystery. Marta, still cautious, hesitated. The air in the room seemed heavier by the minute, as if the house itself was alive, watching their every move. Sophia, leave that alone. We shouldn't be messing with things in this place, Marta warned, but she knew it was a losing battle. Sophia, with her relentless curiosity, wouldn't give up so easily. With a sigh, Marta approached, wiping the dust off the chest with her hands to get a better look. The lock seemed old, rusted, and on the verge of falling apart. With some effort, they managed to break the rust holding it, and the lid creaked open with a sharp sound that cut through the silence. Inside, there was no gold, no valuable objects, just a folded letter, yellowed with age. Marta's heart raced. Old letters always carried a sense of mystery, and in that eerie setting, the idea of reading something left behind by former inhabitants made the atmosphere even more unsettling. Marta took the letter with trembling hands, feeling the thin paper nearly disintegrating between her fingers. As she unfolded it, her eyes skimmed over the words written in shaky handwriting. The contents were disturbing. The letter spoke of the house's previous owners, a family that had apparently vanished suddenly, leaving everything behind. It mentioned strange events, unexplained noises, and a constant feeling of being watched. Marta stopped reading and looked at Sophia, who was staring at her wide-eyed. This isn't just an old house," Marta whispered, a chill running down her spine. The atmosphere, already tense, now felt suffocating, as if something dark was lurking, waiting. Something they might have just awakened. The thick silence of the house was suddenly interrupted by a sound that froze Marta and Sophia in place. Slow, steady footsteps coming from downstairs, echoing through the old wooden floor. The air around them instantly grew colder, as if the very space knew something was about to happen. "Sophia, did you hear that?" Marta whispered, though she already knew the answer. Sophia nodded, her face pale. Fear was clear in her eyes, and Marta felt it too, her heart racing, blood pounding in her ears. Without saying another word, they both stood up. The footsteps continued, deliberate, almost as if the sound was waiting for them. Doubt filled their minds. Should they run or investigate? Marta took a deep breath. Running wasn't an option, not without knowing what or who was downstairs. Walking cautiously, they descended the stairs, which now creaked louder than before. The tension mounted with every step. At the bottom of the stairs, the hallway was shrouded in a haunting gloom. Then, they saw it. Standing in the middle of the room, lit only by the faint moonlight filtering through the window, was a man. His face, calm and unassuming, contrasted sharply with the oppressive atmosphere of the house. He seemed in a strange way out of place, like he'd been there for a long time, yet as natural as the crumbling walls around him. "I'm sorry if I startled you," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I was just waiting." "Waiting for who?" Marta asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. He smiled softly but didn't answer immediately, as if considering how much he could reveal. The sisters' fear shifted into a mix of confusion and unease. The man, with his calm demeanor and serene presence, didn't seem to be an immediate threat, but there was something enigmatic in the air around him, as if he knew much more than he was letting on. "Please don't worry, this place has its stories just like I do. Perhaps we can talk if you'd like to know more." Marta glanced at Sophia, searching her sister's face for an answer she wasn't sure she had herself. The man kept his eyes fixed on the sisters as he spoke, as though each word was part of a larger puzzle, one only he understood. This house, it's not just an abandoned home. It has a deep history, marked by secrets and promises that should never have been broken. He paused, watching their curious yet anxious faces. It once belonged to a family whose bloodline is connected to yours in ways you don't yet understand. Marta furrowed her brow, a chill creeping up her spine. "Connected to us? What do you mean?" Her voice was filled with skepticism. It sounded absurd, like a trick, but something in the way he spoke, in the vague details he gave, made her question her own certainty. The man smiled again, but this time it was a bitter, almost sorrowful smile. "There are many things you don't know about your family's past. What happened here in this place affected far more than just those who lived within these walls. Sophia, her eyes wide, absorbed every word with fascination. Unlike Marta, she felt that this man, mysterious as he was here for a reason, and maybe he could really help them understand what was happening. "What happened to that family?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He sighed deeply as if about to reveal something important but hesitating to give them all the answers at once. "Let's just say promises were broken. Decisions were made that should have been avoided. What took place in this house many years ago still echoes today. And now, you're here, in this same place, touching parts of a story that should never have been uncovered." The tension in the air was palpable as the man cast a significant glance toward the chest the sisters had opened earlier. Marta narrowed her eyes, growing more suspicious. "If you know so much, why don't you tell us what you're hiding? What really happened here?" He shook his head slowly, still wearing that enigmatic smile. "It's not that simple. Some things need to be discovered slowly. If I tell you everything, you might not be ready for what you'll find." Marta felt a knot form in her stomach. She didn't trust him, but there was something in his words that rang true, something she couldn't ignore. On the other hand, Sophia was completely captivated, believing that this mysterious man had answers, and perhaps a solution to the mystery surrounding them. Now doubt lingered between the sisters. Should they follow the vague clues from that man, or trust their instincts and leave that place as soon as possible? Marta stood still, staring at the dusty floor, while the mysterious man's voice echoed in her mind. The curiosity about the house's secrets consumed her, but at the same time, her instinct to protect Sophia screamed within her. "We need to leave," she kept thinking, repeating it like a mantra. And yet, her feet remained anchored to that cold floor. She looked at Sophia, who, in contrast, seemed fascinated by the idea of uncovering what the place held. Sophia, always so full of hope, so eager to believe something good could come out of such a terrifying situation. Marta knew that if she decided to leave, Sophia would resist. Her younger sister had always been the dreamer, the one who saw beyond the obvious. But was it safe to follow that vision now? The man's words rang in her ears. "There are many things you don't know about your family's past." That unsettled her more than anything. Marta had always felt there were gaps in their story, empty spaces their parents never filled. But could this house, this stranger, really hold the answers? Really? If she decided to stay, she'd be risking Sophia's safety. But if she left, the doubt would haunt her forever. What if it's true? The question came as a whisper, a small spark of doubt beginning to ignite her mind. What if what he's saying really has to do with our family? The conflict between fleeing and discovering was becoming unbearable. Every part of her seemed pulled in a different direction. Her mind was practical, rational, but her heart, it wanted answers. She felt there was something bigger at play, something beyond her immediate understanding, and running away would mean ignoring the chance to learn where she and Sophia truly came from. Marta took a deep breath, feeling her heart racing. It wasn't just about uncovering the house's secrets, it was about discovering who she and Sophia really were. Marta and Sophia sat on the dusty floor of the room, the chest still open in front of them. The first letter, set aside, had already raised more questions than answers. Sophia, her eyes still curious and restless, rummaged through the chest while Marta wrestled with her thoughts. The house, the man, the cryptic words he had spoken. Everything seemed to weave together into a macabre puzzle that neither of them knew how to piece together. Then Sophia, her hands dirty with dust, ran her fingers over a loose board at the bottom of the chest. "There's something here," she exclaimed. Marta turned quickly, her attention now fully focused. With a soft click, Sophia pulled the board away, revealing a small hidden compartment. Inside, another letter, yellowed with age, folded carefully. Marta took the letter, her hands trembling slightly. Something inside her told her this wouldn't be easy to read. As she unfolded the paper, her heart seemed to stop for a moment. The handwriting, familiar, was the same as in their mother's old diaries. She exchanged a glance with Sophia before beginning to read. The letter spoke of a time before Marta and Sophia were born, when their parents were young, and hadn't yet left the town. It revealed a terrible truth, a secret their parents had hidden for years. They had been directly involved in the tragic events that took place in that house. Deaths, betrayals, and a dark pact that was never meant to be uncovered. "It can't be," Marta murmured, her voice breaking as her eyes raced through the final lines of the letter. Everything they thought they knew about their parents was crumbling before their eyes. Sophia, silent, squeezed Marta's hand, sensing the tension growing in the air. "He knows," Marta whispered, lifting her eyes from the letter. The man, that stranger who had appeared out of nowhere, knew much more about them and their family's past than he had let on. She could feel it now, as if all his cryptic words had been designed to lead them to this moment, to this devastating discovery. The weight of what they had read pressed down on both of them, and Marta felt a mix of anger and fear. What other secrets did this house hold? And what did the man truly want from them? The sisters stood in the middle of the room, the silence between them profound. Marta still held the letter, her hands gripping the paper as if she could crush everything it represented. The mysterious man, who had been watching from afar until then, finally stepped forward. His face, partly illuminated by the faint light filtering through the broken windows, seemed older and more weary than before. "It's time for you to know the truth," he said in a low, grave voice. Marta took a step back instinctively. Her distrust grew with every second. Sophia, on the other hand, despite her initial fear, looked at the man with a mix of curiosity and an odd sense of comfort. Somehow she felt that he wasn't a threat. "Who are you really?" Marta asked, her voice thick with suspicion. She was no longer willing to be deceived. The man sighed as if this moment had been a long time coming. "My name is Gabriel," he said slowly. "And I am, or rather, I was the guardian of this house. Decades ago, I made a promise to your family, a promise to protect the secrets buried here, and more importantly, to one day bring you here when the time was right." Marta felt a chill run down her spine. The idea that he had somehow manipulated events to bring them there left her uneasy. "You brought us here on purpose?" She could hardly believe it could be true. Gabriel nodded. "Indirectly, yes. You had the right to know the truth about your past, about what happened in this house. But you also had the right to choose what to do with it." Sophia, always the more sensitive one, took a step toward the man. "And now? What are we supposed to do with this truth?" Her voice was soft, almost as if seeking guidance. "That's up to you," Gabriel replied, his piercing eyes now focused on both sisters. "But remember, the truth always comes at a price." Marta stood still, eyes fixed on the floor as her mind raced with doubt and fear. Every fiber of her being wanted to leave that house, to take Sophia far away and never think about any of this again. Running seemed like the only sensible option. After all, Sophia was still so young and vulnerable. Marta had the responsibility to protect her, to keep her safe. That had always been her priority. But something deeper, something she couldn't ignore, kept her from taking the next step toward the door. The mystery surrounding the house was directly tied to her family, to her own blood. The letters, the secrets, Gabriel. Everything pointed to more to be uncovered. And the thought of living without answers, of never understanding the truth about the past, consumed her. She looked at Sophia, who watched her in silence. There was a pure trust in her younger sister's eyes, a quiet acceptance that Marta would make the right decision, whatever it might be. Marta could see that although Sophia was scared, she was ready to follow her lead, trusting in whatever path Marta chose. Marta's heart pounded in her chest. The weight of the decision was suffocating. Should she run or stay? Protect her sister or push forward, risking everything? Her hands trembled slightly as she took a deep breath, trying to control the surge of emotions. "You don't have to do this, Marta," Gabriel said, his voice steady but without pressure. "The choice is yours, but the answers are here, and only you can decide if they're worth knowing." Sophia stepped forward, holding her sister's hand. "Marta, I trust you." In that moment, Marta knew. She looked at the door one last time, then slowly turned to Gabriel. "We'll keep going," she said firmly. "I need to know the truth." Marta and Sophia climbed the stairs slowly, their hearts racing. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the house itself moved with the rhythm of their thoughts and emotions. The darkness around them mingled with the faint glow of the moon filtering through the dusty windows, casting long shadows across the corridors. The walls were covered in dust, but beneath that forgotten surface there was something more. Something familiar. As they explored the upper floor, Sophia was the first to notice. "Marta, look at this," she said, pointing to an old rocking chair in the corner of one of the rooms. Marta approached slowly, feeling a tightness in her chest at the sight of it. A faded memory surfaced. Her mother sitting in an identical chair, gently rocking and singing a lullaby. She paused for a moment, feeling herself transported back to a time when life was simpler. Sophia, who had been silently observing until then, began rummaging through a small box she found on top of an old dresser. Inside were yellowed photos and handwritten letters, fragments of the past revealing a story of long-kept secrets. As she picked up one of the photos, Sophia gasped. "Marta, this is our mother." Marta stepped closer and saw it. It was indeed their mother, but much younger, standing beside a family Marta didn't recognize. The letters also contained names and addresses Marta had never heard of. A chill ran down her spine. Her mother's past was there, hidden in those pages, and it was far more complicated than she could have imagined. As the sisters continued to dig through the contents, Marta felt a weight on her shoulders, as if the house itself was whispering to her, lost memories that needed to be uncovered. With each discovery, their understanding of their own family shifted. This house wasn't just an abandoned place. It was part of who they were, part of a story that had been kept silent for too long. The heavy silence of the house was broken by a loud creak from the stairs. Marta and Sophia, their breaths quickening, looked at the man standing before them. His gaze was dark, but there was now a disturbing clarity in his eyes. "You need to know the whole truth," he said, his voice echoing off the empty walls. Marta stepped forward, her heart racing, feeling the weight of every word. "Tell me what you know." The tension in the air was palpable. The man, with a deep sigh, began to reveal secrets buried for decades. Every word that left his mouth was like a stab to Marta's heart, as she realized her family's true role in the dark history of the house. But before he could finish, something changed. The house, as if it were alive, seemed to close in on Marta. She could feel the past suffocating her, the mistakes of her parents, the unspoken choices, the ghosts of her own story. Sophia, sensing her sister's despair, grabbed her hand. "Marta, we need to leave." But Marta knew there was no escape without sacrifice. Looking at the man, her eyes hardened. "If this is what has to be done, I accept," she said, ready to face the consequences to protect her sister. The air in the house was heavy, almost as if it breathed with them. Marta looked at Sophia, whose eyes were filled with a mix of hope and fear. The house, now revealed, no longer felt like a refuge, but an ancestral burden they had to carry. "And now, Marta, what do we do?" Sophia's question echoed through the halls as if the house itself awaited an answer. Marta, now aware of the true story, felt the weight of the past on her shoulders. Everything they had uncovered, the secrets, the tragedies, and the broken promises, tied them to that place in an inexplicable way. But something inside her, a flame ignited by the courage and sacrifice she had already made, began to grow. She closed her eyes for a moment, replaying every step of their journey. "We could run, Sophia. We could start over. But if we do that, this story will keep haunting us." Sophia squeezed her hand. "So what do you want to do?" Marta took a deep breath, the cold, dense air filling her lungs. "Maybe sometimes the only true escape is accepting what has already happened." The decision was made. The sun was beginning to rise on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The sisters walked side by side down the path that led them away from the house. The cold wind still bit at their skin, but the weight in their hearts had lightened. Marta looked at Sophia, who now had a different gleam in her eyes, stronger, more assured. They didn't exchange words, but they knew something had changed between them. The fear that had once guided them had been replaced by a new confidence, a sense that, no matter what the future held, they could face it together. Marta sighed, feeling the wind in her hair. The house, with its secrets and painful stories, was now just a distant point in the past. And despite all the suffering they had faced, she knew that leaving meant leaving behind not just a place, but a version of herself that no longer existed. With the path ahead, unknown and challenging, Marta finally felt ready for whatever came next. Did you like the story? Leave your comment below what you thought of this story, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss any stories like this.